This happened 2 years ago at Christmas time. I worked in a pretty large office with a lot of other people. Every year, our department of about 20-something people has a little party with a gift exchange. I remember that a couple of days before the party, I went to the store to get my gift. We all drew names to see what other person we would have to buy a gift for. I drew Amanda, who was a pretty good friend of mine. While I was at the store trying to figure out what to get her, I happened to notice another coworker there. It was a guy named Mike, who, to be honest, always seemed like a pretty strange guy. He didn't really work that close to me and was in another room, but he would work in the same general area. I had heard some things about him over my time working there, and I myself had some awkward conversations with him. So when I noticed him, I really didn't want to go over and say hi, and I didn't think that he noticed me. He was just standing a good distance away and was not looking in my direction when I saw him. So I just finished my shopping and then I left the store. So when the Christmas party arrived, I got there and it was what you would expect for the most part. When it was time for the gift exchange, we all opened the things that we got for each other. The gift that I was receiving came from Mike apparently. What he got for me was a teddy bear with hearts on it. I said thanks and that it was very nice. The rest of the party went on pretty normal. Overall, it was fine, and I went home after that. For the next few days, things went on like normal, but one night I was at home by myself. I lived alone in a smaller house that I was renting in a neighborhood. I was just having a nice relaxing night to that point. When it got late though, and I was about to go to bed, I happened to glance out of a window. What I saw was what appeared to be a person quickly going behind a bush near my house in the front yard. It happened so fast that I couldn't tell who it was or anything, but obviously this was very suspicious. I was now nervous to go to bed, thinking that somebody might be prowling around or trying to break in. I went and made sure that every door was locked and every window was closed, which they were. When I moved to the back of the house to check there, I heard somebody try opening the front door. That's what really got me nervous. At that point, I went over to my phone ready to call the police. Then I went to another window and I looked, but nobody was at the door any longer. Whoever it was must have moved. I wasn't sure if they had left or not, so I just kind of stayed there at the front window looking around. I didn't see anything for probably several minutes. Then I saw somebody come out from behind my car in the driveway. It was a man and he was walking closer to the house. Then I realized that it was Mike. When I saw him, I quickly moved away from the window. I couldn't believe that he was at my house. I had no idea how he would even know where I lived. Moments later, he tried the front door again. Now I decided to call the police. I dialed 911 and then went into my bedroom where I felt safer. When I was in there, I heard a loud bang at the other end of the house. I feared that Mike may have been trying to break in. I didn't know why, but he had always kind of given me the creeps. I stayed in my bedroom for the next few minutes. The police got there very fast. The next thing I knew, I heard police and I looked out of my bedroom window and I saw several police vehicles outside. Mike was arrested for attempting to break into my house. With a further investigation, I found out that Mike did not originally have me for the gift exchange. When he found out who did, he traded with them, saying that he had the perfect idea for me. And inside the teddy bear was an air tag, which is how he knew my location. This information really freaked me out, but I was also very glad that he had been caught.
I'd already spent the whole morning and most of the afternoon with family, so now it was just time to go home and wind down for the rest of the night. Maybe watch a holiday movie or something. I drove 45 minutes from my parents' home to mine. The roads were empty, as you could imagine, and if not for it being Christmas, it would have actually been kind of eerie. Everything was so quiet and motionless outside. Anyway, I got home around 8, pulling in the garage and heading inside. I flicked on the entrance light and immediately saw some papers spread across the floor in the hallway. It was all from a stack of mail I had sitting on the counter that I guess had fallen over. I didn't overthink it, I just picked it all back up and tossed it back on the counter. I did leave the house in a rush that morning, so maybe I ran past it and caused the pile to fall, and I just didn't notice. After cleaning it up, I walked around and turned on the rest of the lights, then went into the living room. I had a Christmas tree set up in the corner. It was one of those small fake ones that looked pretty sad, but it was better than nothing. I sat back on the couch and found a movie to watch, some new Netflix Christmas movie. It was actually pretty good. I watched the whole thing, but throughout the whole movie, I kept hearing something in my house. It was like quiet, almost inaudible creaks. I wasn't even sure if I was actually hearing it or not, because every time I'd think I'd heard something, I'd pause the movie and listen, but didn't hear it anymore. I took it as a sign that this Christmas day was over for me, as I needed to get to bed and sleep off the exhaustion of seeing all my family. I turned off the TV and all the lights downstairs and went up to my bedroom, walking in and turning on the overhead lamp. Without hesitation, I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't pinpoint what it was at first, but I knew my room was not how I'd left it. Something had been moved, and I quickly put all the pieces together of everything else I'd been experiencing since getting back home. My body felt numb, both fear and adrenaline taking over me. I walked back out into the hallway and looked down the staircase, trying to listen to see if whoever had been here was still here or not. I quietly went down, step by step, until I reached the bottom. There was no sound or motion at all. "Is anyone here? I've called the cops. Hello?" It was as I was saying that I realized my stupid mistake of not having called the cops yet. I started to go back upstairs, planning to lock myself in my room and call the police, when sudden footsteps rushed from the living room. It was too dark to see anything more than the Christmas tree branches swaying and a figure rushing away from it. I followed the sound into the kitchen and then the back door. They opened it and ran away. I was just standing there, frozen. Once I snapped out of it, I dialed 911 and locked the back door. I still don't really know what happened that Christmas night. Whoever had broken in hadn't taken much of anything, at least nothing that I really noticed. What I think is that they got in just as I was getting home, and once they heard the garage open, they probably sprinted through the kitchen, knocking over the papers, and hid. I know I saw them running away from the tree, but if they were hiding the whole time I was watching the movie, it wouldn't explain the noises I was hearing. Maybe there really weren't any noises, or it was something else entirely. The thought of them being right there in the corner of the room in front of me, waiting and watching me for 2 whole hours, is just horribly disturbing. I wish I had more answers and could tell you more, but that's everything I know. Police weren't of much help, and nothing has happened since. Hopefully, it stays that way.
Every year on Christmas Day, we usually host family over at our house. We have a decent-sized place, and most of the family lives nearby. I live here with my wife, and a few years ago we were hosting Christmas like usual. So family members started coming over at around 12 o'clock, and they were mostly parking on the side of the street out front. Our neighborhood is pretty quiet, but not super isolated or anything. When pretty much everyone had gotten there, I remember that somebody told me that there was a random car in the driveway. I walked over to a front window, and I saw this large SUV with really tinted windows just sitting in the driveway. Apparently, it had just recently got there, but hadn't left. Nobody had gotten out of it either. I looked at it and wondered who was driving, because I had never seen the car before. Nobody was getting out, and it wasn't leaving, so I decided to go out and ask. I thought that maybe it was somebody who was lost trying to get to a neighbor's house. That was the most logical explanation in my mind. So I opened up the front door and I walked outside. However, as soon as I stepped out into the front yard, the car, which was already running, started suddenly backing up. I was not able to reach it, and the car quickly left the driveway and then drove off down the street pretty quickly. It seemed weird, but at least they were gone now. After that, I went back inside. Over the next few hours, I talked with lots of family, and soon we had our Christmas dinner. Some of us were going to take a walk around the neighborhood after, because even though there was some snow on the ground, it was a nice day and rather warm. When I got near the front door though, I was shocked to see the same SUV parked in the driveway again. I opened the door once more to go outside. When I did, once again, whoever it was backed out and then quickly drove away. This was very strange. I remember noticing also just how tinted the windows were. It was like I couldn't see anything inside. So I had obviously no idea who was driving or anything. Well, we ended up taking a walk around the neighborhood. I didn't see the car at all, and nobody else did either. We went back in after that, and everybody hung out some more. That night, people started to leave at probably around 7 or 8. By 9 o'clock, everyone was gone, and it was just me and my wife at home. Well, we were in the living room watching a movie, and my wife got up to go get something from the kitchen. However, on her way back, she went to the front of the house and passed by a window. I heard her mention that the car was there again. I walked over to the front of the house and looked outside. Once more, that same SUV was sitting in the driveway. I really couldn't believe it. We both stood there near the front door and watched it. The car was running, but nobody got out or anything. We watched it for at least 10 minutes. It was crazy. Then I had enough and I went to leave again. This time, as soon as I opened the front door, I took off and I sprinted for the SUV. However, like every other time, the car quickly backed up and then drove away. I was unable to catch up to it. I then went back inside after that. My wife and I were both very confused. For the rest of the night though, the car didn't come back, and I haven't seen the SUV since. I'm hoping that I never see it again. I still wonder about it though. Last year, I went to a Christmas party with some friends. I have a pretty large friend group that I've had for years. Most of us live in the same general area, and Jim and Vanessa, who recently got married, live in a really nice apartment building. They're part of the friend group, and they decided to host the Christmas party last year in the recreation room of their apartment building. You can rent out the room, and it's very nice and also large. There's a kitchen and dining room and stuff, so it's popular for parties of all kinds. So I went to the party, and there was probably 30 to 40 people that wound up coming. So many that I didn't even know all of them that well, but I at least recognized everybody, and most of them I did know very well. We talked, had food, drank, and had a very good time. I remember though, there was this one woman who I did not recognize at all. She was the only person at the party where I had no idea who she was. I thought maybe she was somebody's girlfriend who had just recently started dating or something, but she didn't really seem to be with anyone. I would see her on and off during the party. I never got around to saying hi to her or having a conversation and asking who she was or anything though. Eventually, people started to leave the party. I would say that there were maybe 15 or 20 people still there when I left, so a good amount. When I was leaving, I remember noticing the woman sitting by herself, sort of in the corner of the room. After I left, I walked out of the apartment and to my car. Then I started to drive back to my own apartment, which was like 10 minutes away. Well, the strangest thing happened. That very same woman ended up following me home. I hadn't noticed anything at all until I pulled up to a red light and was like maybe 2 minutes from my place. When I stopped, I just casually looked in my mirror at the car behind me. I saw that in the driver's seat it looked like the same woman. I didn't know what to make of this, but from that point on, I paid attention to her driving. She made all the same turns as me. It was very confusing. Soon, she was turning into my apartment complex along with me. I was pretty confident that she did not live in my building or anything. I had never seen her at all before. So I drove around the parking lot with her still behind me. I parked my car in the space that I usually did. The woman drove a little ways past, and then I saw her parking in an open space a ways away. I got out of my car and started walking for the door. I heard a car door open and close and glanced over to see the woman then walking in my direction. I went faster and I made it inside a good time before she would reach the door. After getting in, I went up a flight of stairs and then looked out of a window outside. The woman was standing near the door, indicating that she did not have a key to get in. Then I went to my apartment. I texted a few friends about it and I put in the group chat asking who the woman was. Well, nobody had any idea. Everybody just kind of assumed that someone else knew her. But it turns out not a single person at the party knew who she was, and then she ended up following me home. After that, I haven't seen her since. The next time I left my apartment, she was gone, and so was her car. I'm still very confused about it.
This was the first year I'd be spending Christmas alone. I think it sounds sadder than it was, but I couldn't afford the flight back to my hometown and couldn't take off any extra vacation time to make it worth it. Anyway, I always enjoyed seeing others' decorations and driving or walking around on Christmas Day. When I woke up, I turned on the old cartoon Grinch movie and made a nice breakfast and some coffee. Then I spent the next hour on FaceTime with my parents and siblings. After all that, it was probably around noon. I didn't have much else to do, but at some point I went out to get the mail, and when I opened the door, there were footprints in the snow on my porch. What's odd is that they were frozen over, like not freshly made in the powdery top layer of snow. They were clearly made hours ago, like overnight when it was well below freezing. I looked around, even though they clearly were not here anymore, then went out and got my mail. It was very strange. I don't know if I felt scared, but definitely a bit unsettled. I didn't really know what to do about it though. I tried to continue my day without worrying too much. After all, it was Christmas. I had some Hallmark movies play while I opened the gifts and letters that my family had sent in the mail. Around 3, I started getting bored and checked the weather. It was supposed to get a lot colder later in the day, so I decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood while I still had the chance. I bundled up and started down the sidewalk, looking at all the Christmas lights and taking in the calmness. A little bit into the walk, I noticed someone else walking in the neighborhood. They were the only other person I saw, and they were walking on the other side of the road. I thought nothing of it, but a few minutes later, they passed by me again. I did a double take, thinking I was seeing things, because there was no way we could have passed each other twice so soon, unless they turned around right after we passed each other the first time. I kept walking and came up to a split where I could either head back home or keep going around the neighborhood. I ended up going home. It wasn't because of the guy I saw. Sure, it was strange, but something else just felt off and made me want to head back. I went in through the front door, and eerily soon after I got inside, there was a knock at the door. I had only just taken off my boots and was still standing right by the door. My heart pounded in my chest like I knew this was bad. I looked out the peephole and saw a guy standing very close to the door, wearing a baseball cap tilted downward, covering his face. Weirdly, he seemed familiar. I didn't know why. At the moment, I thought it was just because he was the man I'd seen walking around the neighborhood. He knocked again. I knew he had to have already seen me enter. "What do you need?" I called out. They didn't answer. A few seconds later, they banged on the door again. I asked again what they were doing here and what they wanted, and watched out the peephole as he just stood there against the door and refused to answer or speak at all before banging on the door again. He then grabbed the door handle and started shoving his whole body into it. I backed away as the whole door shook, rattling from its hinges with each blow. It went on for maybe 20 to 30 seconds, then it all suddenly stopped. There was a pause, and then multiple people yelling. When I went over and looked, there were 2 cops outside my home arresting the man at my door. I was completely confused and unsure how this happened. I thought it was just some kind of miracle that they showed up at the perfect time. It turned out a neighbor had actually called the police and reported a man acting unusual, walking back and forth down our street for hours and standing outside my home. Even more disturbing though, I knew the man. He was an old ex from probably 6 years ago. He didn't even live in the same state as me anymore, and we hadn't talked at all since the breakup. It's scary to think that so suddenly, years later, he just decided to show up at my house on Christmas Day and try to break in. The cops found 2 knives on him, and in his car that he parked a few blocks away, he had a firearm and a whole roll of duct tape, both that he purchased just a few days prior. He admitted to nothing, but it's not hard to see what he was likely intending to do.